Well, happy Sunday morning, one and all. It's time. Time to wake up. Time to get your coffee. Mmm. Coffee. For those of you who don't know, I'm Scotty Roberts. I'm your host here on not the Intrepid radio program, as the banners might say, but on It's Sunday. And this is kind of our casual, very informal foray. It's much like the captain's cabin, only on Sunday morning. Maybe we should call it that for Sunday mornings instead of Intrepid Radio. Well, so far it's just called It's Sunday. Let's keep it simple, stupid, huh? So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the program. And let me just get a couple of things adjusted. Lighting wise, hey, Delaney. Good to see you got your coffee. That's a good thing. And Grumpy Stack, y'all. Good to see you down there in Louisiana. And who else is in here? I know Roger Rabbit is here this morning, and Master Finn is here. Good to see you, sir. Glad to have you here this morning. And not many yet, but we're going to have Ruben Fasthorse is going to come in a little bit. He's got his language class, his Lakota language class that he's doing, and he's going to give us a little promo for that. Is Uncle Dave here? Oh, there he is. My eyes went right by him. Hey, Uncle Dave. Good to see you. And so it's still at 9 a.m. It's still early morning here, and Raini's still in bed, and the kids are still in bed. Everybody's asleep here, unless I talk too loud. So everybody's sleeping still. So we may or may not get Raini signed today. And I think she's going through midlife crisis or something anyway, because she's just got, she kind of, I don't want to get on it. I think part of it is she's got to come over here and sit in a chair, because her computer, she can tune it in and she could come in on a separate screen right over there. But her computer's kind of wonky lately. We got to replace her computer. And her picture's really harsh. Stuff like that. So we'll get her in here. Hey, Matthew Sainsbury from Barbados and Lalena. Good to see you. And so how's everybody's Sunday morning going? You can see, unlike the nightly radio show, we actually have sunshine coming in. Well, overcast sunshine coming in the window today. So it changes the whole complexion of the studio in the different light. Those of you who are familiar with the show would know that already. So welcome. And Lilanian's having her morning coffee in the beautiful personal tumbler that Raini made. Oh, fantastic. So you got it. I'm glad you got that. Shoot us a picture of you drinking out of it. That'd be great. My good cups are all used up, so I've got just my American Eagle cup that I think got picked up at a garage sale or something. So that was the only one left in the cupboard. We've got 30 coffee mugs. And I open the cupboard, there's one in there. And then I look, and there's about 8 of them standing in the sink. And I thought, did we use 8? Because we did the dishes yesterday morning. So why is there coffee cups? That many coffee cups? Everybody was out running yesterday. But the dishes still stack up. So, they're beautiful, she says. We had a good logo to put on them, Lilania. So, thanks. I'm glad you like them. And that's fantastic. And Lilania, I've got my coffee in my Intrepid mug, says Matt Finn. My Intrepid mug is upstairs. I actually didn't finish my 3rd cup of coffee yesterday morning, and I set it down by the sink, and there it sat this morning, and I didn't feel like washing the mug this morning, so I am not with my Intrepid radio mug. But thank you, Matt Finn. And Flynn, do the dishes. Yeah, he's still sleeping. So he stays up too late. Dave, you know, he is just like you and me. He's a night owl. He does his stuff at night. And he got $60 for shaving the top of his head. And so he was urging me, pleading with me to bring him to the store last night because he needed to spend some of it. So he went and got himself a Lego Star Wars X-Wing fighter for about, what was that one? Their prices are weird because that one is pretty detailed. I think he spent $40 on that. $40 for a Lego spaceship. And we were looking at stuff. He goes, "Oh, I want that." And it's $130 for a kit, a Lego kit. If you're into Legos, I suppose you're familiar with what all those prices are. And I said, "Well, I said, Legos are made out of, let's see if Ruben's got his thing up. Oh, here's his link, by the way. I want to copy this link. It's lengthy, but this is the link for Ruben's language show, which starts at 11 o'clock. Oh, and I see he's out in the wings here. Oh, he just disappeared. Let's see if that link works. Oh boy, that's a wildly long link. I wonder if that's the right one. Let me see here. Lakota language and culture class. Copy the link address. I'm going to try this one more time over in the chat room, and let's see if it's any better, or if it's. Oh, there you go. That's a better link. There you go. There's the link to Ruben's show. The one I just Facebook.com events. So you can go over at 11 o'clock Eastern, which is 10 o'clock. No, noon Eastern. I'm sorry, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. And you can see, you can join Ruben's class. There, he's back in the wings. I'm going to bring him on board. Boom, there he is.
Dodo.
How you doing this morning, Misu?
Chia, brother. That's a word in Lakota for older brother, and I'm Misu,
Yes, that's me,
little
all
brother.
right.
But
Misu is younger brother, little brother.
Yeah. And we've been friends for golly, 25 years now, I think, or something like
25
that.
25 years. Something
Amazing.
like that. So
I was approached, people don't know this, but I was approached by Scotty and his and I wear a kilt to this day, a kilt, because of him, because he put me in a kilt.
That's right.
I got a black industrial kilt I have on. Anyway, long story short.
I've got one of those.
He approached me and said, "Would you like to be our Mohawk Scout? Is it 32nd or 42nd Highland Brigade?"
The 42nd Regiment.
42nd
Regiment. Portraying 1759.
Nice.
With the French and Indian War. So.
And I was the only, I think I was the only real Native American reenactor at the time.
Yes.
So he approached me and Eric Nelson and everybody else, and it was fun. It was great. It was reenacted battles. I remember we were in Iowa, and as reenactors, we have to coordinate who we're fighting with. So, you know, I picked a guy, and he was bald anyway, but he pasted a mohawk
on his head,
on his head, and so I got to scalp him.
Nice.
And then I got shot. So, and when you get shot, you got reenacted, and then you just got to lay there. You can't.
You lay there on the field until the battle's over. You're doing it for an audience. Hey, Beth Kirkham, welcome to the chat room this morning. Morgan Snow, good to see you. We've got an eclectic audience out there this morning. So,
if you don't mind, Chia, older brother, I will sing a song now.
I want to hear this.
And this is a song in Lakota. People call us the Sioux tribe. I'm from Standing Rock, but I also grew up on Pine Ridge, which is the poorest place in America. And I've been speaking. I've spoke at the UN 4 times. 2019 was the year of Indigenous languages. I've taught at NYU and in South Dakota as well. But beyond that, I'm just saying that this song I'd like to sing is, I've been thinking about it, thinking about you, Chia, in the sense of It's a Shapeshifter song. Very old. I don't know how old, but the Lakota believe the Sinte Sapele, which is the black-tailed deer, which is known as the mule deer out west in the Badlands and Black Hills. And it's big, twice as big as the white-tailed deer in Wisconsin. Wisconsin, as I used to say.
Wisconsin.
I lived in Milwaukee, so near Sheboygan. Anyway, so the song refers to the shapeshifter and the stories of guys would pick up a couple, an older man and a young older woman walking, and he could tell they were old by the way they wore their attire, their dress.
Mm-hmm.
He had overalls and a hat, and she had an old sundress, and they'd be walking towards evening. Deer are what you call they're up in the dawn, and then they're up in the evening. Crepuscular. They're called. They're not nocturnal. They're not diurnal, daytime or nighttime. They're in between. And so he would pick them up and just be vacant on some road, dirt road, and he'd talk to them in Lakota and how are you doing and whatnot. And so we just like to walk, in the evening. Mm-hmm. And then a couple miles down the road, they said, we'll get off here. And they would get out. He says, I can take you where you need to go. And they would get out of the car. And then he would look in the rear, adjust the rear view mirror, and he would see two deer jumping over the fence into the prairie.
Yes.
So they're very sacred in that way. The song is talking about being a shapeshifter, so to speak. Here's the metaphysical part of your show.
Yes.
But and it correlates with people that I've spoken to in Ireland, the fairy folk, and we have little people. They have little people. People don't know that in Dublin there is a monument dedicated to the Choctaw tribe of the southeast, in which during the potato famine, the Choctaw, what little money they did have as a tribe, they sent to Ireland.
Yes.
They sent to Ireland, and the Irish never forgot that. They don't forget. And so they constructed 12 or 13, I forget, feathers as tall as a man that are made of bronze. And then they put lights around it. So all these feathers are in a circle, and it's dedicated to the Choctaw tribe as a way of saying thank you, which is which is great in that way. So
fantastic.
So there's connections between pagan cultures back and forth. And paganism is really paganistic, which is Roman for country dweller. Kind of like us saying redneck or something like that.
Kind of like that.
Kind of like that. So the song is saying, Lemi echa traia wakinaji elo, and it's saying, Lemi echa, this is me. Traia wakinaji elo. I suddenly appear, and then I disappear. So that's a magical aspect. Kola lemi echa traia wakinaji elo. This is me, and I appear, and then I can disappear as well. So I'll sing this song for you.
All right, let's hear it.
About that, I think of you like a shapeshifter in that way. Sete sapela ku Oh la la me ye chaya kaya walking a yellow oh la me ye chaya kaya walking a yellow la me ye chaya kaya walking a yellow oh Sente sapela ko kola la me ye joy I walking a yellow hey ho hey hey ho hey
Oh, so can you tell us what that actually said? What were the words of all of that? Was
let me walking a yellow like a magician I appear. And I am the black-tailed deer, and
okay?
I can disappear as well. I appear and disappear, and that's it's a Shapeshifter song, very old, but I just thought it was really appropriate for today's show. So you just can't,
Yes.
you know. I was thinking about the songs I wanted to sing, but then I thought that was the most powerful in many ways.
I like
That
that. You
we
can
have
sing
to.
another if you'd like. I
Oh,
like those.
probably in a
I
little
was
bit.
going to ask you.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, when I hear Native American songs, they sound more like chants, because you hear a lot of, and anybody out there, you included, listening, who hears me do this, I'm not mocking it. I'm just telling you what I hear. When I hear a Native American song, I hear a lot of hey, hey, and it just seems to constantly repeat that. So are the songs made up of, it's like I listen sometimes to see, do I hear discernible language, or does it sound like sounds that are coming out, like vowel sounds and things? And sometimes I can't discern that. So is it like, are most of these songs you hear like that, is it chanting, or is it that's repeating a phrase, or am I just, because I don't understand the language very well?
No, you can call it chanting. I'm not offended by that. I've been a teacher all my life, in the classroom, on the street, everywhere, and overseas, yada yada yada. And I worked in the same classroom as I was the Lakota teacher, and then I had an elder man that was a Lakota language teacher, and across the room from me was a non-native teacher. She was from Wisconsin, believe it or not.
Wisconsin.
Blonde, blue-eyed girl, and she was the American music teacher. So we compared notes
Okay.
all the time, and people say, because they don't know any better, chanting, but they're really called vocables. Vocables. And it is, I can sing it in Dakota. Same word, Lakota,
So now
Dakota.
that's not really that. Would that be
Word.
like us saying la 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 la
Yeah.
la 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 la? Is that that
La la
kind
la
of what
la
that
la
is?
la la la. Yeah, that'd be the
Yeah.
same thing. It'd be
Okay.
how you wanted to sing it, but it
Okay.
was a means of putting the notes or vocables in front of the
Mm-hmm.
words, So, um,
You see what Lelania said here, by the way.
yeah, I saw a coyote
I,
walking. She walked behind a tree, and a black cat walked out the other side. Wow, that's pretty powerful. There's
so,
and the old people say, is it Claudia? Is that right? That was
Lelania.
Lalania. Lalania. I did my vision quest, which is called a humbletia, which is crying for a vision. And the old people would tell me, before I went on the hill, 4 days, 4 nights, no food, no sleep, no clothes, nude, with a pipe, a bowl of water in front of me and a bowl of dried meat jerky for temptation. But I would sit there and pray all night. And they said, the more you look out in the world, in nature, you look in here, inside yourself. So nature is the thing. And the old people say, Ehani Lakota ki wamakashka oyate ki lakoli wog he hanki he lakoli woglakapsa. Back in the old days, when the Lakota, the native people, could speak to the animals, and the animals could speak to us. We don't have that capacity anymore. We don't even have sense of the weather anymore.
Very Dr. Doolittle.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So like the meadowlark, Western meadowlark, has a song that goes, and it's saying, and my father taught me this. The meadowlark is singing a song in Lakota saying, over here is a small buffalo calf laying down, and he sings that song all the time. And my mom would come out of the house, and the crows would be cawing, ah, ah, ah. And my mom would say, "You shut up, Inila, don't speak,
Inila."
And what she was saying was that I said, "What are they saying, Mom?" And she said, "Ra, ra," which is your hair's messy. Your hair's messy. So she would say, "You shut up, Inila."
Nice.
So things like that we don't have the ear for. Or sometimes we're so inundated and busy that we forget to listen to nature in that sense. And that's why that song came up. Scotty and I were talking earlier before the show, and it was about the very subject of this, is that the more you're in nature and the more you're around it, the more you become it again. And you will be able to see things like you saw a kaya go behind a tree and come out as a black cat or something like that. Shapeshifters.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, and I have, and I've mentioned this on the show before. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I had said to Flynn, it was in the winter, and I said, as soon as it gets a little warmer outside, because I don't want to go outside and freeze, I said, you and I are going to go out to the woods, and we're going to just sit down.
Oh, yeah.
Find a place that's inviting, that speaks to us, and sit down and quiet. And there's your shape-shifting cat behind you right now.
Yeah.
And
I was just going to say, his name is Sapa, which is black.
Sapa. Yes.
But actually, this is his brother, Mustache. He's got a little mustache, white mustache.
Yeah. Which it's a nice little mini language lesson. The Black Hills are called Pahasapa in I know that much in Lakota. The Black Hills, does that translate to hills or mountains?
Baja is hills and Sapa is black. So
Black Hills.
If you need, in my Lakota class that I teach, so I'll teach at noon here today in New York, on Zoom, and you got the link from that. You have to think Lakota to speak Lakota. And what I mean by that is that we say black hills, the adjective before the noun. But in Lakota, it's reversed. It's hills that are black. And that helps people to understand.
Let me ask you something. I was talking about Flynn and wanting to get him out into the woods. It's because he's 12. He's going on 13. I think this is a good time to do that. I want to sit out in the woods with him and see this actually came off of how do you attract the fae or the fairy folk or the elementals without putting yourself in danger personally of any kind, because you don't know what you're necessarily going to get, what disposition you're going to get when you do that. But just to sit out in nature and let it speak to you, and you go back to the same place over and over, and you offer your songs and your prayers and things like that up. And it is said by those in the know that you will experience something doing that. And Flynn is all on board. He wants to give this a try. But so we're going to do that. We can talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to ask you. You had mentioned, and you've mentioned before, that Pine Ridge Reservation has been known to be the most impoverished or poorest place in America. And so now, have you seen any change in current day to that? Is it still as impoverished, still as I mean, with things like the rise of casinos where native tribes are able to have their casinos, and it puts I know, like here in Prior Lake, out west of here, a
Oh yeah.
suburb of Minneapolis, Prior Lake, where it's, what is it? Which is it? The Minneconjouan Sioux that are there? I don't know which it is, but in Prior Lake they have the big casino out there.
They're
And
Dakota, which is the D
Dakota.
dialect.
Okay.
So when we speak Lakota, I can understand Dakota because it's very similar. It's the same language, but it's just that they use a D dialect. And then there's Sioux that are in Canada, Pheasant Rump, places like that. And they're Nakota, and they speak with an N. So if I say Lila, which is very, Lila washte, it is good, washte, Lila washte. A Dakota person would say Dida washte, Dida washte. And a Nakota person would say Nina washte, Nina washte. So it's just that the dialect changed a little bit. But
so Pine Ridge, where you grew up, is that as impoverished today? I was talking about, I lapsed into the casinos only to say that, like the out there in well, I just went blank on it. The one we were just talking about, Prior Lake. The casino out there has really greatly benefited financially the members of the tribe who live there, and you can drive through there. You don't really notice that you're on a reservation. It's just, there's a little sign that says you're now entering the reservation, but it looks like you're just in rural, not even rural, suburban Minneapolis,
Bloomington,
and you're suddenly, everything looks the same. You're just on a reservation now. And but there was something like, I think they said the casino there gave over $70,000 a year to every family that were members of the tribe. Now, this was 10 years ago I heard that, because the casino is there for the benefit of the tribe. And yes, for the people who run it and the people who own it, they make money. There's nothing wrong with that. But they also benefit their tribe. Their police force there is probably one of the most advanced police forces technologically, and so on, because the casino supports it and puts that money into the community. So do you have the same kind of thing that's going on? When's the last time you were out at Pine Ridge, and what's your observation as to where they stand today?
They're not standing well, simply because poverty is not in the wallet or purse. It's here. And so when you think poor, you are poor. You think well, you're well. And so the people have that kind of mentality. It's like the McCoys and the Hatfields. Families fight each other. And old man said to me, the Lakota were great fighters. They had an empire, which Canada, half of Montana, half of Wyoming, half of Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan, and Minnesota, they occupied and had always fight. And so saying that to say this, we fight each other, and that's what keeps us poor. In that sense. And the casino was thought to be the golden calf to the Hebrews, the golden buffalo, so to speak, but it didn't, it didn't. And those that are empowered by that have the say of who gets what and who doesn't get anything in many ways.
It's interesting. There is a parallel to that I found in Egypt, that you walk around in the city at Egypt, like in Cairo, or even in Luxor, which is almost 500 miles south of Cairo, and you notice there's an element of poverty that's everywhere. Of course, it's fairly third world, but you've got pockets of Cairo that's very first world. Um, and my friend John had said to me about the Egyptians. He said there is a lack of national pride. There's a lack of personal pride in their country, loss of identity a bit. You'd think Egyptians, above a lot of other peoples out there, would have great national identity, but they don't. And you're seeing things recent days, things like the big celebration where they opened up the new museum, and they put on the big fanfare celebration, and thousands upon thousands of people turned out to that. And it was an historical looking a recreation of the pharaonic parades and things like that, and it was very colorful and beautiful. And you saw some other things like that were being done around the country. Like when I was there back in 2014, and we went to Abu Simbel. You know which monument that is. You've seen it without maybe knowing the name. It's the one with the big, huge statues, 4 of them, of Ramesses II sitting on a throne, and there's 2 of them, and they're gigantic. And there's the little temple door, and it was on the Nile River. It's the one they moved in the 60s up the hill, because of the new dam put in, the Aswan Dam. But we were at that temple of Abu Simbel, and on the morning that was the birthday of Ramesses II, or Ramesses the Great, and it was built. And when they reconstructed it or moved it up the hill so it wouldn't be submerged by the dam waters, they kept the mathematical calculations right. And so on his birthday, February 22nd, you will get the alignment of the sun would rise in the morning, and as it peaked over the horizon, it would shine into the front door of this temple and illuminate way in the back the statues of Ramses and his family and the gods, and it would illuminate those. And so we were there for that event, and they said 10,000 people down on the beach there, and down on the sandy floor below the temple. And that there was dancing and there was singing, and everybody was joyful. We would come in there, and just the local people would come, welcome, 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 and and all of this, and it was fantastic. And so there were events like this I've seen take place that are really things that they're trying to stir again, that national pride, that national mentality about, this is your country, this is your heritage, this is who you are. And I give that long example to say that seems like a parallel to me with what's happening, like on Pine Ridge. There has been for 150 years that national deprivation of national pride, of oppression, of whatever you want to call it, the negative words you can put to it. It crushed a people. And this is what you are referring to when you talk about this being not just financially, but also in character? There is a loss of national pride. There's a loss of heritage. And you've got pockets of people, individuals like you, like others, that rise up that say, we have to restore our national pride. We are who we are now. We're in this moment now. We can't change where we are. All we can do is reprise our national pride and who we are as a people.
Yes, I'm saying I agree with you in the sense of traveling to New Zealand, Australia, Belgium, Germany, speaking at the universities there, London, whatnot, the UN, United Nations, what yada yada. Anyway, the whole point is everybody talks about Black Lives Matter. All lives matter, first of all. And it's not just Latino or Asian or white. Nobody ever talks about the Native American. You don't hear it on CNN. You know, we're
that's
forgotten.
weird.
We're forgotten people in many ways, and it's because we are federally recognized. We are a nation within a nation. People don't know a reservation is a federally grounded. So we have two police forces. We have the tribal police, and then we have the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs Police, which is once at one time was called the Department of the Interior or the War Department, and they dealt with us, and they still deal with us. There was in the treaties, which is international law, you cannot break a treaty. You cannot. It's forbidden. Yet the government has made every treaty with us and has broken it every time.
Well, I know we've talked about this before, but most of those treaties had in their language in the 19th century, the late 1800s, they had in their language the phrase in perpetuity, meaning this will be perpetual, this will be ongoing, and no one can change the terms of this treaty. Oh, until we find out there's gold under your land, you know, which is what happened to the Black Hills.
That's you said it spot on in the sense of in 1924 we became citizens of the United States, yet we fought for them as scouts. In 1978, we could practice our religion freely. 1978.
How can a
home of the brave
law
not for us
prevent anybody from practicing their own spirituality and religion? But they did. And it had to be recognized that you had a right to worship the way you want to worship. And so
it's so saying that to say this, that for Native Americans, we're still trudging along, and thus the result is that's why we have so much the mentality of poverty in our minds. We don't count. We don't matter. And I'm not trying to make it about the Indian show today or anything like that.
I know, no, you're fine. You're wide open here.
I'm just trying to make, what I'm trying to do is awaken consciousness. Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Power of Myth, said, a mythology teacher in Massachusetts, God rest his soul. He said, there you go. He said, these mythos, these legends, these lore are created to create, to rise our consciousness to a level that is spiritual. That's why I agree so much with paganism. Being paganistic, it just makes sense. You're spiritual. You're your own shepherd. You don't need a shepherd. You don't need to be a part of the flock. You can be your own shepherd and create your own way in that sense. But that's why the reservation mentality exists, because of being cut down every time for religion or citizenship or whatever it may be, and treaties, and it's tough. It's tough being an Indian.
I saw, and I've mentioned this, and you and I have talked about this before, the similarities between Native American tribes and Scottish tribes or clans, if you will, in the 1740s when they wiped out the Highland clans under Bonnie Prince Charlie and those, and they outlawed the clan system. England did. They outlawed the clan system. It was illegal to wear your clan tartan or a kilt even. You couldn't speak Gaelic. They did the Highland clearances, where they cleared all the Highland clans out of the Highlands and moved them to the lowlands to integrate into the cities, go to their schools, dress the way they dress, speak their language. And it wasn't really until the Victorian era, which was 150 years later, that the Victorians started kind of glorifying the Highlander. It became fashionable to wear kilts, and they put them into this storybook realm of, these are the old glorious, warring Highlanders. You want to be like that. And And so you had, even now you'll see Prince Charles of England. He will wear his kilt to certain functions and so on. And
I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to
Yep.
jump in on that real quick. Is that even the burial of policemen in America? The guys
Yes.
are all in kilts. I love
Yes.
that. That's just like, wow.
In kilts, they play the bagpipes. And well, the similarities you see are about 150 years ago. The I'm looking for the right word. Demolition came to mind. That's not the word, but the deconstruction of tribal life, the Native American way of life. You weren't allowed to speak your language. They sent your children
They
to
took their children
English
away.
schools to Americanize them. They took them off their land. They cleared them like the Highland clearances. They cleared them off their land and put them on land to either integrate into the cities. If you didn't integrate, you had to go to this dust bowl in New Mexico somewhere on the reservation or wherever it was up here. And so you saw very similar things happening. And it was the degradation of a people. And until I know in the what we portray with the 42nd Highlanders, we portrayed Stuart's company. We wore the kilts and the red coats. This was 1750s in the French and Indian War. Well, what did the king do after the Highland clearances? He says, what a terrible waste of men and manpower. He says, open up, form regiments, and let the Scots come into the military, which Native Americans, you think of the Windtalkers and how they were allowed into the military. There wasn't, I don't think necessarily, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, if there was a specific regiment of like Navajo and others that were able to do the code talking, they used them in the war. But with the Scottish Highlanders in the 1700s, the late 1700s, the king said, let's form Scottish regiments. And so this is where you see like the Black Watch, the Scottish regiments, the Gordon Highlanders, the Sutherlands, and all of these that are all different regiments by number. The Black Watch, it was basically the 42nd Royal Highlanders. And you would have a clan chieftain would be the one that had the money to raise his own regiment, and he would bring them in. It was one of the only forms they had to recreate their system of governance within. There was a clan chief. He might become the general of this regiment or the colonel or whatever, but then he had his all of his underlings, and the clansmen would come, and they could be part of that because they could wear the kilt, they could speak in Gaelic, they could play the pipes, as long as they fought for the English king. And so similarities in the way certain people in the world would treat other certain conquered people in the world, and the similarities between the Scots and the Native Americans are great.
It's amazing. I love this kind of connection, so to speak. And when you talk about code talkers, I spoke at Queensborough College in Queens, New York, 2 years ago in regards to the code talkers. And people don't know that the Navajo Navajo or Dene, as they call themselves, the Dene people, Navajo is their word for Navajo, which means knife. But they spoke in code, even in their own language. So they would say, move the turtle to the left or to the right, or which is a tank. Move the tank, a turtle. So they were speaking, and they look very Japanese. I've been called Japanese many times. So they were interrogated by the Japanese, thinking, "Why are you fighting for these Americans?" And they didn't know that any better. They were Navajo, but people don't know as well. In World War I, in the eastern part of Germany, as well as the Mediterranean episode theater of battles, the Welsh were code talkers.
Yeah.
and the Choctaw and the different tribes, Lakota as well. But the enemy broke through every language except for the Dene, the Navajo
Except for
people.
the Navajo.
And they
Yeah.
were speaking a code within a code themselves. So
Yes.
they understood. But yeah, it's interesting. you
And the
said that.
Welsh. The
And
Welsh, you try to translate Welsh. Especially if you hear somebody from the hills in Wales talking Welsh. So now that's my forebears. I'm,
the only
we
the
play up
only
the Scottish a lot and my kilts and so on, but I'm predominantly Welsh is my heritage.
the
So
only
with a
the
little
only
bit of
thing I can
Scotch
say
in
in Welsh, the only thing I can say in Welsh, yeah, Scotty, is bah, bah.
Come here, you sweetheart, you darling, you.
But
About
yeah,
the only thing I
the
can
clan
say in
system
Welsh
is
is
go
a
ahead.
good morning, a good day. Good day. It's Boreda in Welsh. Boreda. So,
It's interesting the similarities between that side of the pond and this side of the pond
yes.
with the clans. Many tribes have clans, especially in the Northwest, but Lakotas don't have clans. We have societies. So with the men, you had to earn your way into leadership or whatever it
Yeah.
may be. And there wasn't just a chief overall. There were several different policemen, Wakichuze,
Mm-hmm.
there's Itancha, the chief of the people, and then there's Ozuye Itancha, a general, so to speak, of war. And that's what Crazy Horse was. He was a war general. He wasn't a chief, but he was a chief, but he
No.
was more of a war department chief.
The war
And
chief.
Sitting Bull was more chief of the people. And the way there's no doorbells on a teepee.
Right.
You can just ring the doorbell and say,
It's
"Can I
really
see
hard
the
to
chief?"
knock on the door of a teepee too.
So the way Lakota way of doing it long ago was I'd come up to your lodge and I would go clear my throat, and that was the
Yes.
way. Now the Lakota doorbell is you pull your car up to the door and you honk your horn.
Bump, bump.
But the clan
Nice.
system is very similar in that sense, and so we had the men had societies, and the women had guilds like quilling guilds,
Mm-hmm.
or and then we got beading guilds, and then we learned from the pioneer women. Our women learned from the pioneer women to quilt, a quilting guild,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. So that's you had to earn your way for us.
Yeah.
But clans like the Raven clan. You couldn't marry another Raven clan member. You had to marry the Wolf clan, or
Yes.
whatever
Now,
it may be.
you remember the whole thing a few years ago with I Stand with Standing Rock? It was over the pipeline
Dapple.
coming down from Canada. For me, I remember when that happened. This is just anecdotal. When that happened, I said, I stand with Standing Rock. I said, I don't care what the issue is. I don't care about the pipeline coming through. Yes, I supported the pipeline. I think we needed that. But once it hit Native American land, I supported Standing Rock because I said it is their right to determine what happens on their land. They might even be wrong, totally wrong on the issue. But you know what? I could almost see that as being, I might agree with you about the pipeline, but you're going to force it onto my land without my saying yes. Screw off. I'm going to stand against it because in principle, you can no longer tell me what to do with my land. And they were, and that was why I supported them. I said, look, there were treaties that were written in perpetuity. And no matter what I believe about the pipeline, it's good or bad, if that tribe says not on our land, you go around. You find a way to route it a different way. And if it created a problem for the pipeline, so be it. It wasn't their land to do something with. To me, it was once again, just like happened in the 1800s, this land is yours in perpetuity, until we find a use that our government needs to use it. Either mine gold on it or find uranium, as the Bosque Redondo down in, is that New Mexico, is where the Bosque Redondo reservation is? Dust Bowl. They moved some of the Plains Indians down there that were used to the rolling hills, the plains, and the forests. They moved them down to the Bosque Redondo. Said, here's a hoe and a plow in the 1800s. You go ahead and you start farming here. And one thing they found was that over the years and the decades, people were constantly getting sick. They were not well. The crops wouldn't grow well, and so on. And it wasn't until, I don't know at what time they discovered this. I believe it was in the late 60s or the early 1970s. They discover that beneath the Bosque Redondo sits one of the largest deposits of uranium in the world. And so what happened to the treaty rights? In perpetuity, this dust bowl shall be yours in perpetuity. We can't take it away. Until they found out that there was uranium beneath. Then they were trying to close down, and they were trying to say, well, most of the people left there aren't pure tribal blood anyway. And it's like, that doesn't matter. We're the ones that inherited this. This is our land. And that fight has been going on forever. I don't think it's been resolved yet. So anyway, there you go.
No, you're right. It's I want to show you something. I'm just going to grab it real quick.
Okay.
Something that sparked an interest. Let me just see if I can find it. Yeah. Okay. This is what people don't know, and my lady, my girlfriend, says always to show this. Let's see. Here we are.
Oh, yes. Your reservation identity card.
Yep. And right there is how the government sees me, how much Indian I am.
What does it say? Yeah.
It says 23:30 seconds. Tribal identity card. We're the only
So
people.
They've got it down to your
America.
23:30 seconds Lakota.
Yeah, that's how they you talk about the dilution. That was the whole process of wanting to eradicate us in that sense. So black people, Latino people, nobody else in the country of America has to have an identity card that proves that I am American Indian.
Right. It's like in the movie Braveheart. What did Edward I say? If we can't force them out, we'll breed them out. That's exactly it.
It's crazy. So a lot of the impoverishment in the mind as well as in the wallet on Pine Ridge is that, oh gosh. Hey, thank you, David Potter. Is that,
and you know why it got diverted onto Native American land? It's because the whites didn't want it crossing their land.
Right.
That's how it started. So
and talking about the pipeline, the DAPL, Dakota Access Pipeline. I learned I was there 2 times and camped there, slept in the snow in a tent with a mummy bag and whatnot. It didn't just impact the native people. It also impacted the ranchers, the white ranchers that were downstream that have to feed their cattle, they get water from the Missouri and whatnot. So it wasn't just about the Native Americans and their plight, but that was such an episode. It was awesome. The first time I went there, it was mostly college kids that were camped out and doing reconnaissance at night, watching the pipeline people and videoing and whatnot. And they were not Lakota; they were Ojibwa from Minnesota, of all people. But that was great. That was awesome. And so we interviewed them. And then later on, the second time I went, it was such a impact in the sense of they had a gauntlet of flagpoles all the way for like half a mile of all the nations, of all indigenous people. We had Laplanders from Finland. We had the Amazonian Indians from the Amazon, Aboriginals from Australia, Maori from New Zealand. The Standing Rock became a beacon, like in Lord of the Rings when they light the beacons.
Right.
And that's what it became, and everybody came, and it was great. It was all indigenous peoples that were wanting to voice their concerns as well. And the saying was, the native nations were like this, now they're like this. Yes. We are here.
Rocky and I, we were doing a radio show together back then when that hit, and he and I were wanting to go out there, and we never got the opportunity. We couldn't get it worked out to go out there and leave our families for a few days, and we were going to head out there and do some broadcasting from there, and we never could make that happen. But there was something else that made me think of with the coalition. It just made me, again, another anecdotal story, but remember when we had the ranch and we were buying it from an old cowboy from Wyoming who had moved to Wisconsin and had the ranch there, and we were buying that ranch from him, and he told me a story once of, remember and of course, how can you forget, on Pine Ridge, the Wounded Knee incident, not the ancient one from the late 1800s, early 1900s,
Seventh Cavalry,
not the ghost dance issue, but the schoolhouse issue with Leonard Peltier and Russell Means and Dennis Banks and the standoff and that was in I want to say it's 72 or 73.
71 days of occupation. Yep.
And of course, the FBI and the U.S. military even had enclosed all these Native Americans who were holding out with weapons at the schoolhouse on Pine Ridge Reservation. I was in 1973. That hit big time. I was in the 7th or 8th grade in middle school when that took place, and so we heard a lot about it at the time. But I was 12 or 13 years old. But the old rancher that we were buying the ranch from, he said, yeah, and he talked like this all the time. He was an old cowboy, rodeo cowboy from Wyoming, and he was in his 70s, and he said, he says, back during that thing, he says, there was some notorious white ranchers that had one night driven some cattle in from the backside into the compound where the Native Americans who were there at the schoolhouse could slaughter them and eat. And he said there were certain cowboys who got on their horses and rode those cattle in by night. He says, I just might happen to have been one of them, but I can't tell you that officially. He says, because I could be arrested. And he even had his wife. He's now passed away, but he had a very young wife, by the way. He was 76, and she was, I think, 29.
Wow.
Or 30. But so I still talk to her today. She had FBI people coming to their house after it was either after he passed away or just before he did, and we're looking for him. Still,
wow.
He was still on a wanted list because he was one of these guys who had driven cattle in to support the Native Americans during an FBI standoff with them at Wounded Knee.
It's crazy to say that because when I moved to Pine Ridge in 84, I was just becoming a ninth grader, and that's the first time I saw an Indian with long hair. This kid who had braids at where I went to school.
Just have to say quick good morning to Anton. Andy Dabbs just
Good
popped in.
morning. He honey washed it, and so I remember sitting at the lunch table, and the kid walked by, and in my mind I said, "Wow, that's a real Indian." What am I?
Yeah.
But you wake up. Awakening consciousness is what we're doing here today, people. We're awakening our consciousness, because when you expand that scope, you cannot undo it. It's like putting a pebble into a still pond, and it creates a ripple, and that's what's
Yes.
happening here. But I wanted to tell you that people don't know that in 1973 with Wounded Knee, I grew up next to Dennis Banks. He was my neighbor. He was in the next trailer house, and my dad and him used to jog together
Nice.
every morning. But
Got to get the sign language in there, don't you? They had to jog together.
So the
I hope I didn't say anything bad.
No. Marlon, people don't know that Marlon Brando flew a plane in. He didn't do it personally, but he had sent somebody to. Speaking of the ranchers that brought the cattle, Marlon Brando hired a guy to fly into Wounded Knee at night, and then they delivered goods
and dropped goods.
Nice. Dry goods, medical equipment, supplies, and they took fire from the army and the ranchers, the white half breeds that were there occupying it as well.
Can't even deliver them food.
It's crazy. And you go to Wounded Knee, people can go. You can see my friend Tom Hollowhorn, who's a resident at Wounded Knee, and he's in my class. He's one of my teachers as well. They say that there's one man that died at Wounded Knee that is Native American. His name was Tony Lamont. Tony Lamont, and he is buried in Wounded Knee Cemetery when you go up to the hill, and you see tobacco ties and flags all around the graves. The mass grave, 300 men, women, and children.
Right from
what
was it, 1890?
And long story short, his headstone is there, and it said 3,000 people came to Wounded Knee in 1973. Only one remains, and that's his.
Oh, and that's him.
That's him sitting there.
And folks, if you don't know, go ahead. If I cut you off, I didn't mean to.
I was just going to mention real quick, and then you can share again. So the first ride they had was in 1980, where they rode from Standing Rock when 1890 Sitting Bull was killed by Indian police, and so that spooked my people, the Hunkpapka, those that camp at the end of the horn. That's what that means, Hunkpapka Lakota. And then the Minikonju Lakota, which is Minikonju, is those that plant by the water. They and Chief Bigfoot, who had pneumonia, they left the northern plains to go to Pine Ridge Agency, where Red Cloud and was at. And so they came down, and that's where they got killed for being disarmed. And there was a deaf man that didn't understand to give up his rifle, and it went off, and that's what triggered the volley of Gatling guns, killing all of them.
I was going to talk about that history for a little bit. They were transporting that tribe, and they stopped in Wounded Knee, and they danced the ghost dance. And they were ghost dancers, which was where Wavoka, the Native American prophet,
Paiute. He was Paiute.
Paiute. He came out and he started talking about the preaching to the people about how the red man will rise again. But he wasn't talking about war. He wasn't talking about rising against the white man. And he told his fellow Native Americans, he says, He says, don't go to war and don't fight with the whites. Live peaceably with them. And he said, but know that we as a nation will rise again. And he had all of his, and he said, the way to bring this about is to dance the peaceful ghost dance. It wasn't a war dance. It wasn't anything like that. And the people would gather and they'd form in a big circle and they would dance this peaceful dance called the ghost dance. And the whites didn't like it. The Federalists didn't like it. Why? Because they saw this as a way, the Indians are going to coalesce around this cause, and then they will start war with us again. And that's the way. So they outlawed the ghost dance. And so here you've got this band that were at Wounded Knee. I believe it was, I want to say it was 1892 or 1898. It was right at the end of the 19th century. All the big Indian wars were already over. They were being moved to a different reservation, and they were camped at Wounded Knee at the agency there, and they started dancing the ghost dance. And the army that was there didn't like this. They were very nervous, but they stopped them from doing that. They lined them all up, and they wanted all their weapons. And this is the story you just told. And there was one of them that was deaf, and he didn't want to give up his rifle. And a soldier came down and he said, I paid a lot of money for this rifle. This is my rifle. You can't have it. And they tried to forcibly take it from him. Gunshot went off. And what happened? The army opened up fire on them. And this is what you have, the massacre at Wounded Knee. And that's if you go to Wounded Knee today, or even back in the 70s, when they had the standoff at the schoolhouse at Wounded Knee. You've got that monument on the top of the hill where this all took place, overlooking the valley where this took place. And with the monument there and the mass grave, you can find old photos from the 1890s of the mass, when they dug the mass grave, and they're putting all the bodies of the Native Americans into the mass grave.
It was a church that they occupied.
Oh, a church. I thought it was a schoolhouse.
No, it was a church.
Okay.
And
the little white building, I know. That was it.
Yeah. So Tom Hollahorn, who lives there, who's my chia as well, older than I am, he said recently in this year, last year, they discovered human remains from that battle still. First called a battle, but it was really
they called it a battle. The Battle of Wounded Knee. That's what the way the white society in the newspapers colored the incidents out west. There was a battle, a raging battle of Wounded Knee, and what it was a massacre of men, women, and children with no weapons.
It was the last so-called conflict with the Indian Wars that ended. But so we have something called multi-generational grieving. People are still affected by that, and again, that adds to the list of poverty in that way. Hey, Leslie.
Hi, Leslie.
But yeah, it's interesting. People don't know about these. It's not just Wounded Knee. It's also Sand Creek out of Denver, Colorado. And so that was the whole mentality of the War Department to make sure the Indians didn't rise up, rally, or this called the ghost dance. I call it a hope. It was a hope dance. They hoped for better days. They wanted the buffalo to come back. They wanted their relatives to come back. So thus it was coined the ghost dance. And we call, people don't know, but if you ever get a chance to be in the Badlands or somewhere in the prairie of our country, look at the sky, night sky with no city lights, and you'll see what they call the ghost road. The ghost road is the road that we walk on when we die. It's the Milky Way, we call it in America. And people don't know that as you go further south, it splits. And in the center of the split, the fork, is an old woman. And she will check your head for a tattoo or your hand for a tattoo. And then she'll say, Scotty, did you live a good life? And if you lie, she'll know. And she'll say, okay, take the right road. And then you would walk on the right side of that fork, and then it would end and you would fall back to earth and be reborn again. So we believe in reincarnation. And if you say, no, I tried my best to live a good life, she said, take the left road. And then you'd go into the beyond, which is nirvana, happy hunting grounds, heaven, whatever. Nobody knows. But that's what we believe, the ghost road. When I think about the ghost dance, in that sense, people don't know. We call it the ghost road. We all walk it at the end of our time.
That's I want to bring up something very mundane here, but did you just have a little bug fly in front of your face while you were talking? Okay.
Yeah.
I see those little light anomalies, and you can usually tell what's a bug, but it came out at a very interesting point when you were talking, so I was going to ask. So
I'd like to share something right now.
Would you?
This is speaking of dancing. Many do not know you're an amazing dancer, one of the best dancers I've seen. Oh, thanks, Dave. Cheers.
Yeah, you should see. I've still got some videos of you dancing and dancing with your young son.
Oh,
he could
yeah.
have been maybe 2 years
Callan.
old.
Yep.
So
his name is Callan Chetan, which is hawk.
He's what,
fast
22
horse.
now?
I think so. He's in Australia with his mom and my daughter, my Chingxi, my daughter, Arwin Kimimila, which is butterfly. Fast horse. And then I've got 2 sons from another marriage, first wife, and my firstborn is Mako Wanji, one bear, after our chief, one bear, and our family. And then his brother, Charlie Ohitika, fast horse. Charles the Brave, fast horse. Anyway, but I wanted to share this with you that in Native America, there are so many words and so many languages, and many of them, when I spoke at the UN in 2019 for the Year of Indigenous Languages, I was the only Native American to speak. The rest were from different parts of the world, which is great too. So I shared this with them, and I told them that there were so many languages. You got Germanic, you got Slavic, you got Romantic languages from the old world. But here in Native America, there were so many other tribes. And so you have Iroquoian, Onondaga, Mohawk, Oneida, Six Nations here in New York, Algonquin, which is in Wisconsin, the Great Lakes, the 3 tribal fires, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwa, Anishinaabe, Potawatomi, and Ottawa, the Algonquin. And then you have Huron as well, too. And then you have the Siouan, which is out west, which underneath our umbrella of language, it's the Osage Omaha. Omaha means to go against the wind because it's always windy there. And so the Ponca and the Crow, but they'll never admit it because we're still kind of enemies that way. But so to say a word in coffee, like the word coffee in Blackfeet in Montana, you would say sukapi, sukapi, sukapi. If you're in Dene country, Navajo country, you'd say ichwe, ichwe. These are all words for coffee in the native languages. The Hidatsa of North Dakota say ska did for coffee. And the Arikara say midishibija.
That's hard to say when you're not awake yet.
That's So the Ojibwa in your neck of the woods, they say Makade Mashkiki Wabuin, black medicine water. Makade Mashkiki Wabuin. So you just I'll have a cup of Makade.
Makadidi mamashmujamun. Yeah.
And
Give me a cup of that.
it's funny to say blueberry pie in Ojibwa language, which is the second most complex language next to Chinese. The Ojibwa say, Medibaske midisigan bada jigangwe se jigane bugwejigan. Medibaske midisigan bada jigangwe se jigane bugwejigan. Which
you
is
want whipped cream on that?
Yeah, really. That's something extra. But so that is Native American languages work in the sense of they're picturesque.
Mhm.
And so that's why we use our hands and whatnot in speaking. But that word means it's a paragraph unto itself, it seems, but it's talking about from the point you pick the berry off the bush to pulling the pie out of the oven. That's that whole sentence right there.
Wow.
And so that works. So that's how it works.
Isn't
And
that
so
kind of, it's almost like saying, you know what I want? I want that berry that was picked and processed and baked into that crust and put into the oven and come out, and it's now hot steaming pie. I want a piece of that.
it's like lava.
There it is. Like
But
lava.
so thus the reason for the story is because of Indian Sign Language predates ASL, American Sign Language, older. There's an Eastern version, which I'm trying to discover here in New York. But out West, I was taught by my uncle. And so I wanted to share this with you. Indian Sign Language, speaking in sign and gesture. And so I'll do it first, and then I will translate it. And it goes like this.
Now,
Okay.
Now I know some of that. I've seen you do that one before, and I can make out what some of that is. You know, give me eyes to see, or the rising sun over the hill, and straight eyes and clean hands and so on. I know some of that. So go ahead
Very
and
good.
translate that for us.
And you could go look up Reuben Fasthorse on YouTube, sign language, and you can learn it. I'm trying to get as much people as possible. So the translation comes from a poem or a prayer from Chief White Cloud, who's Lakota, and he translated this way: "Oh great mystery." Twisting up. Oh, great mystery, whose voice I hear in the wind and whose breath gives life to all the world. Hear me. I am small and weak. One of your many, many children am I. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunrise. Make my hands respect the many things you have made and make my ears sharp to hear your voice and make me wise, that I may know the many things you've hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength not to be greater than my brother, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me always ready to come before you with clean hands and straight eyes, so that when life fades as a fading sunset, my spirit may come before you without shame. And so these signs are
When you
really
said
interesting. Go ahead.
great mystery was this, and then you said spirit was what? It's very
Same
similar.
thing. It's spirits. It's a great spirit, great mystery. I
Okay.
call it the great mystery myself, but
You talked the great mystery, then you talked about my spirit.
yep.
So the same.
Yeah. It's interesting, the sign language. Things like I find most fascinating. Thank you, Leslie. I think of this one is wisdom, not here, but here. The Indian way is wisdom is in your heart. And then it's like unraveling a piece of string, you pull it out to know. And fear is retreating. It's when a deer or a buffalo, when they're afraid, they'll put their heads down and then slowly back away. So it's just, wow. I'm just, blown away by that primitive language, that very intelligent, that they knew. And they would speak to other tribes and trading buffalo for corn. The three sisters, corn, beans, and squash. The corn was a stalk, and the beans would vine up the stalk, and squash would spread out to keep the weeds away.
Only one of which digests very well. Kidding.
Really. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to share that I think.
Yes. And these are the things, and I know I've only mentioned it a dozen times on this show. Whenever you're on, you and I have spoken to great extent about writing this book together, and not to be a textbook, but to be much like what I did with the Sword in the Clay or with Tam O'Hare, writing stories about the Native American culture and mythology, and in relation to Celtic stories and mythology, and how we have these two characters, which are basically Reuben and me, done up as historical characters. Might make us animals, I don't know, anthropomorphized like Tam O'Hare. Might just keep it human, but setting us back in time to these characters living in maybe the late 18th century or something like that, and telling these stories, comparing these stories in narratives. So one of these days soon, I hope we will get to actually coming up with something. I got so many projects to finish that keep getting set aside because I take on new projects, but this is one I'd really like us to achieve. And
let's would you send me the info on Fort Ticonderoga? Susie and I will be out there, and
all right,
would love to just sit down and
absolutely take some time. And folks, he's talking to me. He's referencing. We talked this morning earlier before the show, Reuben and I, and we're talking about. I want to remind you all that we're doing that trip. It's for the weekend of September 24th, which is a few months out yet. But we're taking a trip. I'm bringing Raini and the kids, and we're driving out to Ohio, and we're meeting with Russ Hasledge, and we're all driving out in his big van from the Trek Federation out to Ticonderoga, New York, to visit the Star Trek sets, the original series reproduction of the Desilu Studios Star Trek sets. And so we're going, which are fabulous. If you want to look up, just look it up. Star Trek sets. I don't even know the website. Star Trek sets, Ticonderoga, New York, and you can't miss it. And you'll see what that is. And get yourself to Fort Ticonderoga. We've posted links a couple of times. Get yourself up there, and it's $38 for the tour. We'll all meet and greet. You'll have to probably, if you want to stay overnight, you can get a hotel room, motel room, and so just come on your own and meet us, because we're all going up there, and we're going to meet Reuben, who is not far. It's a hop, skip, and a jump for him to get to Ticonderoga from where he lives.
Warwick, New York. Yep.
You're Warwick, New York.
I said this to you earlier when him and Scotty, Chia, and I were talking, that my father, God rest his soul, Joseph Peacock Sr., introduced me to Star Trek, William Shatner black and white show. And there was interesting things I found about it, that Lieutenant Lahura, the only black cast member, Uhura, the only black cast member, and William Shatner did the first interracial kiss on TV. So that was amazing for its time. And she was going to quit, not because of the kiss, but
she just thought she wanted to move on from that.
Yeah, she wanted to leave and didn't feel like she was really necessary. And somebody spoke to her in her dressing room, and it was Dr. Martin Luther King. And he talked her back into staying on TV in that way. And it's just really profound things for its time, and what it brought in many ways.
Yeah.
It's
Dave Potter. He's talking about television production or movie production.
So. Just to say something real quick, Dave, for as much as conflict there was between indigenous native people and non-native people, there were good white people too. People don't know, you don't hear that. You don't hear that there were good people that helped. You only hear the negative, and we're kind of wired that way to only focus on the negative. I'm sure there were good Englishmen that helped the Irish and the Scots as well.
Yes. There was something out in Colorado in the 1800s where I believe it was northern Colorado, where there was like a you can think of it, the fat cats behind the scenes smoking the cigars type, the stereotype we get in our head of the
barons,
the barons, the corporate entities that were trying to drive the natives off of their land because they wanted the gold beneath it. And so I believe it was in Colorado. And the whites living in the area, I think it might have been Denver, were very much against what these guys were trying to do to the Native American tribes. I don't remember all the details of that story. We covered it when I did that big series on Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee a couple of years back. But they, the whites were really against what they saw these people. Then they would get the government on their side, federal government. They get soldiers in there, and the whites were like, "Hey, this ain't right." And there was a lot of conflict over that because the whites stood against what the other whites were doing. So when you see this whole thing of the whites and the people of color and so all that, it's not that. It's not a racial thing. It's individuals within those races that create the hardship and create the problem. So that's what we seem to forget, is that there are individuals who do things. There's nothing that's done by race against race. It's individuals trying to profit, individuals trying to establish their authority or their power over somebody else. And so it's interesting to look into all of that. We got Matthew Sainsbury is calling in. Let's see if we can bring him up here. I'm going to drop the banner to the show. Boom, like that. So we've got room to bring him in. This is Matthew from Barbados. Matthew Sainsbury, how you doing this morning?
Hi. Good morning, guys. Good morning. Good morning, Ruben Fast Horse. Nice to see you. Yeah.
He is a true pirate of the Caribbean, Ruben.
Okay. Yeah, it was something I wanted to discuss with Ruben Fast Horse. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but there was a guy called William Harrison. I think he became a United States president in the 1840s.
William Harrison, yeah.
Yeah, well, he did some campaigns against the Shawnee Indians that were very brutal. And I think there was a brother of Tecumseh who was a prophet who made a prediction that those who did these things, as every president as elected with 0 year, negative things will happen, bad things will happen. And William Harrison died shortly after in 1840 when he became president, I think it was. And then the funny thing is, Abraham Lincoln was elected in 1860, assassinated, in 1865. You had James A. Garfield elected. I think he was assassinated in 1880, if I recall. William McKinley, another one, 1900. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he came in, then he died in office because I think he was elected in 1930 following the Great Depression. You had John F. Kennedy, came in office in 1960, assassinated in 1963. And it nearly happened to Ronald Reagan, but he managed to survive the assassination attempt. So you find in Native American
you have Joe Biden, who was elected.
Yeah. You find in Native American prophecy, that's a very interesting prophecy story you heard, because I only learned about it a few weeks ago. So it's a very, very deep thing. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's you don't know what to make of that stuff, but there seems to be a track record of sorts.
Yeah. I find that anything that happens to the Cheyenne, Lakota, any Indian nation, if they make a prediction, things happen, things come to pass. So,
sure.
Yeah.
It's thank you for sharing, Matthew. Tecumseh, his name is Shawnee, and it means the panther. The panther. So I'm thinking of the people in your country right now have a lot of Native American in them, because Caribbean is named after the Carib tribe.
The Caribs, right?
Oh, I forget there's another Arawak.
Arawaks the locals here, Barbados.
They were first slaves.
Yes.
To the non-native people.
Spanish.
And then when they died out, or became diluted or gone, they brought in Africans.
Yes, the African slave trade.
Yeah. So there's many: Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Seminole. The 5 nations of the Southeast adopted. They had slaves, but they also absorbed them into the tribe.
Culture,
when you look at star quilts and attire, dress, clothing, some of the African is spilled into the Native American, and they put it in as well. It's interesting. I'm just going to say real quick, the only 2 people to defeat the U.S. government in military warfare were the Seminole of Florida and the Lakota from South Dakota.
Because America was actually turning 100 years old in 1876 when then his U.S. cavalry were whooped. You see, so
we taught them. Native Americans taught them guerrilla warfare
tactics. Right.
They never had. They would line up and fight.
Well, the British when they first came here. Were that's the way you fought. That's in open battle. You went out onto the field and you lined up against the other army and you shot at each other. And it was the Native Americans who basically taught the American colonists how to fight guerrilla warfare from the bushes.
That's why George Washington told Edward Braddock to be careful, because he learned from guerrilla warfare from the Indians how the French Indians fight in the Ohio Valley. You see, but Braddock wouldn't listen, so he got his regiment shot to pieces.
So what Lakotas taught was to flank. So they would run at you, and they'd turn around and run back over you. And while they're coming at you, in the prairies, you don't have anywhere to hide. No trees, no bush. It's just open land. And they're coming at you, but you're so concerned about them coming at you, the Indians, that they're flanking them on the side too. They're hitting them on the side as well. And the Cherokee Apache would lay in the sand with a blanket and then bury themselves. And as the soldiers would ride single file, they would shoot out of the sand and grab them. Seminole had swampland, so they knew how to fight.
Dave Potter says, Uncle Dave says, Hollywood has always pushed the negative side in the conflict. It's one of the great shames of our people. They could have changed so much by showing the unity that was there too. So
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
and like I say, it's not a race that subjugated another race. It's the individuals in government, the people in power that were greedy or that wanted something, the people that was sometimes very different than what your average white American settler wanted when they were out there. They wanted peace and they wanted to live together. But the government and the people in power pushed the negative and pushed the war.
That happened too, yeah.
That's why is it that people outside, this is Lelania, why is it that people outside of the U.S. know our history better than most U.S. citizens?
Nice question.
There you go. It's propaganda. That's why.
And the schooling...
It's propaganda from within.
From what I learned in going to school in America, is you have the Big Bang Theory, then you have dinosaurs, and then you have the Indian Wars, and then you have World War I, World War II, and they skip over everything. There's nothing. You have to find it out yourself.
Yeah, you really have to do a lot more research into things.
I think it's probably just an elective course, but when you start getting into high school and college and they allow you electives, I would love to see some good Native American courses on Native American history.
Yeah.
Now, you read a book by D. Brown entitled Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Some will look at that book and say, well, that's just Native American propaganda. It's their side of the story. I said, it's their side of the story. What we call the winning of the American West, watered down from the conquering of the American West. That's what the U.S. government did.
Manifest destiny. Thank you, Matthew.
Manifest destiny. We believed that we should own this continent from shore to shore. And anybody in the way, God forbid you stood in the way and you were a native people. And don't you ever wonder, it would have been a very different outcome if the Native Americans were the ones with the superior firepower.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it came down to. Whoever was the most powerful and had the biggest weapons was able to subjugate the other.
Who had the top guns, you could say.
The manifest destiny of America is not just in America, it's also in Australia. When I lived in Australia, they took the Aboriginal desert people, put them on the coast, and they took the coastal Aboriginal and put them in the desert. So tough stuff. I mean, I had countries roots and foundation.
I had a copy of Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee.
There's a movie.
I don't know what I did with it. I was just going to hold it up. Flynn wants to read that. So.
Well, I was wanting to tell Ruben that there was a movie.
I took it out and I put it in the...
Yeah, there was a movie my dad liked called I think it was called Whale Rider. It shows New Zealanders, and it shows the original New Zealand people. When they had the
Maori.
Yeah. But it showed this girl that she wanted to be part of the tribe because the grandfather only believed that boys should only be inherited, pass on that whale rider tribe because apparently their ancestors rode on the back of a whale. But in the story, though, eventually shows in the middle of the part of the story that the girl was destined to be. They wanted to leave the tribe because she was able to revive a whale that was found like not half dead, but couldn't go into the ocean. When she came on the top of the whale responded. All the other boys couldn't do it. It's called Whale Rider. The actor is Keisha Castle Hughes. You can watch it. It's a very good inspirational movie. It's actually based on a book. So I learned a little bit about New Zealand and the Australian Indians through some of that content too. Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Steve Clark. There.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
there's
Scotty.
a couple of movies. Now, again, we're talking pop culture here, but there's a couple of movies that are not focused on the Wounded Knee Massacre, but but involve. One of them was Viggo Mortensen, who played Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings series of movies. He did a movie called Hidalgo about his horse, the man in this horse, and in the horse racing, not horse racing like you think of it in the stadiums, the long distance overland racing back in the 1890s and early 1900s. And at the beginning of that movie, is a depiction of what happened at Wounded Knee, and the massacre there, and also one that is a little more totally different kind of story, but the movie with Val Kilmer, where he plays a half-breed FBI agent who didn't know he was so much. He knew he was half-breed, but that was all. That was it. He was as far as he was concerned, he was another white guy. And but he learns more about it, and he has to go to the Dakotas, into the Black Hills, to try to solve a murder from a federal point of view, and it deals with this whole uranium thing, deposits, and all of that. But it's it all takes place and links into him on a spiritual side and a vision side with the Wounded Knee Massacre, and I don't know if they built a replica of it for the movie or if they filmed it right at the site. For some scenes in the movie where you've got the replica of the front gate with that metallic arch that goes over the top of it, with the two brickwork pillars and the arch that's to the monument and the grave, the common grave there. But that's a good movie. It's a fun, entertaining movie. From one aspect, and the other is it gives you a little tiny bit of a look at what Wounded Knee was all about. So apparently in this movie, his ancestors were part of that. And
there's a great movie called I'd recommend to everybody out there, Lakota Woman, based on Mary Redbird, who was there at Wounded Knee. And so that's good. But also it's in Hidalgo, Viggo Mortensen, his Lakota name is Wichachbi Hochshila. They call him Star Boy. Star Boy.
Hochshila. That's what you taught my daughters, Abby and Bryn, when they were young, about this boy that was bullying them at school. You just say Tata Hochshila. Or stupid boy. Yeah.
Crazy boy. Yeah. Nuts.
Yeah.
Matthew, thanks for calling in, brother.
Thanks. Nice.
Thank you, Matthew.
So yeah, Tata Hochshila.
It's funny you remember that.
I was just telling that to Rowan and Flynn the other day.
Oh, nice.
Boys that bully them. I said you should call them what Reuben Fasthorse told Abby and Bryn.
They like Uncle Reuben.
Uncle like she. And so anyway, on that note, Chia or Misu, unless you have more that you want to present, I'm gonna call it quits for this morning. So,
okay. I just say a little bit more, and then I got to bounce too. I got a class to teach. Join me if you can. So just all of this made me think about Matthew's accent and how, as Americans, why we speak the way we speak. Because I lived in Australia and I've been in New Zealand in '97, and they have a very distinct King's English. The English don't own their language anymore. The most people that speak English are the Chinese, believe it or not. So our language is derived from all the Native American tongues that I was sharing earlier with sign language, whatnot. But so Canada is really Connecticut, the motherland. Tennessee is Tennessee. It's Cherokee for the village. And, the Dakotas are the allies. Wisconsin is Mishkonsing, which is Mishkonsing is a land of dark waters. When you go up north into Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, you come across the tamarack tree that loses its sap, gets into the water, the acid in the water, and makes it darker than it appears. The land of dark waters. You may be stepping into a 6-foot hole or 6 inches, but you can't tell. Minnesota is Dakota. Minnesota is the land of smoky water, where there's so many lakes there that they steam, fog, mist, and rise, especially towards the spring and towards the winter.
And Mine, of course, being water.
Mini is water. Minneapolis. Apolis is Greek for city, so it's a water city. In that way, Milwaukee is Milwaukee, Menominee Indian for beautiful land by the lake. That's debatable.
Melania wants to know, what is Missouri?
Missouri. No. Missouri is referring to water as well. Mississippi is Nizzizibi, Ojibwa, for a long lake, a long river. And then you go to Ohio. Ohio means Algonquin, long river. Connecticut, here in upstate here, not too far, Narragansett. Connecticut is long river. So they try to make a New England, a new France, a new Spain, but they ran out of words, and they began to take on the Native American languages, words, and places. And so 27 states have Native American names. That's over half. Two books I'd recommend are a teacher from the University of Minnesota. His name is Jack Weatherford. And he wrote Native Roots and Indian Givers. Not a big read, pretty simple. Very straightforward. The naming of America, lakes, streets, places, stuff like that. So something really informative. Everything that I've been sharing, I've been taking from those books myself, as far as I can remember. So, I'd encourage everybody to keep waking your consciousness, expand your consciousness.
Yes.
You're that pebble in the stone where it just ripples, and that's what Scotty does for you every time. So I thank you, Che, for letting me be on.
Misu, thanks for coming on. And I've got a whole complement of books, almost a whole bookcase over there dedicated to Native American from I've got a bunch of books on Custer for some reason. I keep acquiring them. From all different perspectives of Custer, and a lot of the spirituality books, and the Spirit of Crazy Horse. And I just bought one on tribal or Native American magic, not the performing of magic, a history of, a study of, an understanding of Native American spirituality and so on. And that's laying around here somewhere because it's newer. It gets put on a pile. So
I would love to come back on deck at some point and talk about ceremony.
Let's do it.
How we can do our own ceremony. There's things that we can do that we don't know. Like I said, you have to be the shepherd and don't be the flock, and you become your own shaman, psychic, prophet in many ways. So
yes.
I will.
Well, we will definitely do that again.
Sounds good.
So,
David, be well. There's no words in goodbye in Lakota or Native American languages, so I won't say goodbye. I'll say Doksha Ake. Doksha Ake. Until we see each other, we will speak. Doksha Ake.
All right, Misu. See you later, Misu.
Going to my class soon. Yeah. Be well.
All right.
You
and yours. Prosper. See you later. All right, that was Ruben Fast Horse, as you all know, most of you from now, and know who he is, and he's a good friend of mine, many years, and so that was fun. That came up impromptu this morning. He called me not long before the show started, and we were just talking away. He called me about 8:30 this morning. We got to talk, and I said, you should come on and talk about that a bit. So blessings to you too, Leslie, and everybody else. Everybody, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching on a Sunday morning, having coffee with me. And we will be back, of course, tomorrow night, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. West Coast Time. And all the other time zones in between. Raini's not even up yet. So you can see it's been a Oh, wait, the door opened. So, oh, there she is. She's awake. So now that we're signing off, my beautiful wife is up. Maybe she'll come and make a quick appearance and say hi, bye, as soon as she steps over here. I'll wait for her. And if she doesn't want to, she doesn't have to. But so she just got up. Been watching TV with the kid in there, I think. So I want to thank you all for coming in on Sunday morning. It was fun having Ruben on. That was good stuff. Sometimes he repeats some of the things that we already have heard. I do the same thing on this show. Sometimes, so like today, he brings in some new information as well. So there's my beautiful. Hey, good morning. You can come over and peek over and say hi quick. Right on. Here she comes in all her glory. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. I'm gonna go find warm clothes.
All right. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Watch your phone here. Okay, back up.
All right, everybody. So you go have a fun day today. Something's blocking me from moving things. There we go. You go have a fun rest of your day, your Sunday, and a good week. And we'll see you back here tomorrow night for the Intrepid radio program. No idea what we're talking about yet, but we'll figure something out, as we always do. All right. So, you know what? As always, I just want to tell you, live long and prosper.